So the hypothalamus, from the name hypothalamus, that means is a sheet of gray matter that is lying anterior, inferior to the thalamus. If we now consider this to be our thalamus, this one. So we said the hypothalamus is a sheet of gray matter that is lying anterior, inferior to the thalamus. That is why it is called hypothalamus. It is just a little bit inferior to, not below. When you say below, that means it's subthalamus. That is what we discussed in the other lecture. So subthalamus is below the thalamus, while the hypothalamus is a little bit anterior, inferior to the thalamus. And as I said earlier, it is a sheet of gray matter. Just like if you now take two sheets of your leaves of your book in the center like that. You have one leaf here, you have one leaf there. So it's like the hypothalamus is just like that. When you open your book, you know, half here, half here. If it's an 80 leaves book, you open it like that. 40 leaves here, 40 leaves here. And in between there, you have where the two, unite. So it's exactly like that. Hypothalamus has, it has a right half, it has a left half. And then anteriorly, it is also covered. So it's like something like this. When you now draw it like this in 3D, so you can draw it like this in 3D. And so that is exactly the way it looks like. So when you divide it like this into two halves, you take one half there. This is what we are seeing here. You get it? So it's just like, there's a space in between this hypothalamus. So this space is what we call the third ventricle. If you can remember while I was discussing the thalamus, we made mention that in between the two thalami, there is a space. That space is what we call third ventricle. And the third ventricle extends forward into the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus, here in between the two leaves of the hypothalamus is what we call the third ventricle. Are you clear? So now the hypothalamus is divided into each half of the hypothalamus. If this is the left half of the hypothalamus, this is the right half of the hypothalamus. If you can remember our phonics that we discussed the other lecture, we discussed that the phonics, if you can remember very well before, we said that the thalamus itself is being divided into three parts by that internal medullary lamina. If you can remember we talked about the phonics that is taking origin from where? From the hippocampus, passes backward, upward, forward. Are you clear? Okay, it passes upward, it passes backward initially, then upward, then forward, and then passes into the anterior hypothalamic nucleus. Are you clear? So by so doing this phonics, as it is coming over the thalamus to go into the anterior nucleus of the thalamus. Are you clear? So it has to pass through the substance of the hypothalamus so that it divides this sheet. The entrance of this phonics, through the hypothalamus into this thalamus. It now divides this sheet virtually into two aspects. So you have the medial half, you have the lateral half of the left half of the hypothalamus. Are you clear? Because we said that if you now take this to be the left half of the hypothalamus, so the entrance, if we assume that This is our phonics carving up to come and pass through this, like this. So the area of entrance here, at this side. So if you now draw a line and extend it, that is the actual demarcation of the half of the hypothalamus. So we have medial part, and then we have lateral part of the hypothalamus of each of the half of the hypothalamus. Are you clear? So now we've seen that the hypothalamus is a sheet of gray matter present on either side of the cerebral hemisphere. So each of the half of the hypothalamus is being divided into medial part and lateral part by the entrance of the phonics into it to reach the anterior thalamic nucleus. Are you clear? So now, in the medial part of the hypothalamus, we have about 10 nuclei, while in the lateral part of the hypothalamus of each sheet, we have only one nucleus. So in total, we have 11 group of nuclei, and these are the nuclei that we are going to discuss. In summary, hypothalamus has 3 major functions. What are these functions? The first function is what we call limbic function. That is the first one. And the second function is what we call endocrine function or functions. And the third one is what we call autonomic nervous functions. So we have all these 3 functions for the hypothalamus. And all these 3 functions now are performed by these 11, hypothalamic nuclei. Are you clear? We already know that limbic function is to do with 2 major things in life. And these 2 things include behavior and emotions. So when we talk about limbic functions, we are talking about the behavior and the emotion. When we talk about the emotion, we are talking about fear, anger, happiness. Are you clear? All these are part of the emotional expressions. And when we talk about the behavior, we're talking about something like feeding behavior, the way we take care of ourselves, our loved ones like wives, children, and so on and so forth. Are you clear? And also the way we do our sexual behavior. Are you clear? All these are part of the limbic function. And when we talk about the endocrine function, we are talking about the hormones that directly act, on organs, target organs, without ductal system. So this endocrine system, they just come from where they are being secreted, follow the blood vessels, and then they go to the target organs. Unlike the exocrine hormones, they have duct. So there's a gland that secretes them, and then the content has been taken to the target organ through a ductal system. That is what we call exocrine hormones or whatever. So the autonomic nervous function is to do with sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic and parasympathetic response. This one is something to do with, our own involuntary control of our body system. As we are sitting down here now, many mechanisms are taking place within us, like our digestion. What we have eaten this afternoon is being digested by our body system, and we are not aware of it. So also, certain chemicals are being synthesized and being released to our own different part of the body, and we are not aware of it. Right now, our heart is beating, and we are not aware of it. It's pumping blood each and every seconds like that, and we are not aware of all these autonomic nervous function. Are you clear? So while the sympathetic is most of the time stimulatory. The parasympathetic is inhibitory to the functions of our body system. So we have now seen the three major important functions of the hypothalamic nuclei. Now I'm going to take each one of these nucleus and discuss about it. First and foremost, let us begin with the medial part of the hypothalamus, where I said that we have about 10 nuclei. So these nuclei of the hypothalamus on the medial surface, the way they are organized, they have been organized or arranged based on 4 structures that are lying at the base of the skull, at the base of the brain, sorry. So at the base of the brain, if you can remember, we have discussed about the optic chiasma, you know. So the optic chiasma, you know, it is formed as a result of the optic nerve coming from our 2 eyes. And then after it crisscrosses, you know, at the base of the brain, you know, so it now goes to the fibers of the optic tract and whatever, they go into the visual cortex. So this hypothalamus lies directly above the optic chiasma. You get my point? So now we have the division, what we call pre-optic group of nucleus. We have supra-optic or supra-optic or suprachiasmatic. It's all the same. Whether you say supra-optic or suprachiasmatic group of nuclei, and also you have what you call tuberal group of nuclei, and then you have mammillary group of nuclei. When you now take the pre-optic group of nuclei, that means this is a group of nuclei that are lying before the optic chiasma formation, before the optic nerve, you know, before the optic nerve comes into the optic chiasma. Are you clear? So it is called pre-optic from the optic nerve. Are you clear? So we have the pre-optic group of nucleus before the optic nerve, and then we have what you call the suprachiasmatic or supraoptic. That means they lie above the optic nerve or above the optic chiasma. This is the optic chiasma. So this group of nuclei, they lie above the optic chiasma or above the optic nerve. That is why the group is called suprachiasmatic or supraoptic group of nuclei. Are you all clear? Good. And then you have the third group that is lying directly above one swelling. I think I have made mention about the pituitary gland that is emanating just below the base of the brain. And this pituitary gland, as it is origin, there is a swelling, you know, at the base of that cerebral hemisphere. That swelling is what we call tuber cinereum. So we have tuber cinereum here, or otherwise known as median eminence. So from this swelling now, the stalk of the pituitary gland emanates. And so the pituitary gland now hangs at the base of the brain. And so it has what we call anterior part and a posterior part. So we have a larger anterior portion and a smaller posterior portion. So most of these hormones that are being released from the tuberal area, because of its relationship with the tuber cinereum, that is why it is called tuberal group of nuclei of the hypothalamus. So most of these hormones from the arcuate nucleus, once they are released, they go directly into the anterior part of the pituitary gland, which we will see later on as we continue our own discussion. The last one, or the last group, is what we call mammillary group of nuclei. This mammillary group of nuclei is to do with the mammillary body. If you can remember, I made mention in the previous lecture that we have a pair of mammillary body, one on either side of the cerebral hemisphere at the base. So, and if you can remember, we talked about how the our own fibers from the mammillary body, they now pass upward, and forward, and then enter into the anterior thalamic nucleus. Are you clear? That is what we discussed when we discussed yesterday with regard to the Papez circuit yesterday. If you can remember, after this fornix formation, we have the mammillary body below here, and from here now fibers pass upward, then forward to enter into the anterior thalamic nucleus. And this is what we call mammillothalamic tract. We call it what? Mammillothalamic tract. And this is part of the Papez circuit that we discussed yesterday. All right? So now we've seen that we have 4 group of nuclei: preoptic, supraoptic, tuberal, and mammillary group of nuclei. Are you clear? So we have seen this. So in the preoptic area or portion or part, we have only one nucleus there, what we call preoptic nucleus, PON. We call it what? Preoptic nucleus. So that nucleus is present in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. So we only have one single nucleus. In the supraoptic or suprachiasmatic portion or area of the hypothalamus, we have about 4 nuclei there. The first one that is lying a little bit directly above the optic chiasma, that is what we call suprachiasmatic nucleus. We call it suprachiasmatic nucleus. Then above it, we have what we call supraoptic nucleus. We call it what? Supraoptic nucleus zone. And then a little bit anterior, in this supraoptic or suprachiasmatic area, we have another nucleus, what we call anterior hypothalamic nucleus, AHN. We call it what? Anterior hypothalamic nucleus. And similarly, just behind that, we have another nucleus, what we call paraventricular nucleus. So we have 4 nuclei in the supraoptic region or supraoptic area. In the tuberal area, the one that is closer to the tuber scenario is in form of like an arc like that, a nucleus that is just like a moon, So moon-shaped, it is called arcuate nucleus because it is just like an arc, like figure C, like that. So it is called arcuate nucleus. And then ventral or anterior, in that same area, we have what we call ventromedial nucleus. And then just behind and above it, we have the dorsomedial nucleus. So we have 3 nuclei that are found within the tuberal area of the hypothalamus. And then finally, in the mammillary area, we only have 2 group of nuclei. There is one what we call mammillary nucleus, and then we also have what we call posterior hypothalamic nucleus. So we have 2 nuclei, one directly within the mammillary body, that is mammillary nucleus, and the other one just above the mammillary body, that is what we call posterior hypothalamic nucleus. So I'm now going to discuss each of these 10 nuclei now before I finally discuss the lateral hypothalamic nucleus. In the lateral part of the hypothalamus, we only have one single large nucleus. That nucleus is called lateral hypothalamic nucleus. So in a nutshell, these are the 11 nuclei that are found within the hypothalamus. So I think we have a break now, and we can answer certain questions, and then we continue.